All right. I will get going because I know you're all waiting for that wonderful lunch. A few people have already kind of gotten into it already. Um, I, I'm excited to have all of you here today. I'm excited to have the opportunity to get up and talk to all of you about hopefully something that might be interesting. I don't know. It's always kind of interesting when you have to do these is are people thinking more about you or more what's underneath the chafing dishes for lunch? Um, this is a special event. This is for those who do know, it's the third year of us of hosting this, and unfortunately, it will likely be the last year. And I will talk about some things as we go through. I'll give shout outs to people as I see them. Um, but I when we first started kind of thinking about what we were going to be trying to do here today, what we were trying to do as a center. Um, and then, again, I don't have to go too far into, maybe some things have changed at a federal level that are causing some concern or some strain and difficulties for folks. So really want to try to come in today and talk a little about some of those things. But it first when I look at across this room, I am just amazed, impressed, thankful that you are all here today. I'm appreciative of all of you engaging, including those of you online. And Stacy, where's the camera? I don't even know. No, oh, there it is. Okay, I got to make sure I make contact with the audience online because they feel left out. I'm just thankful that you're all here and focused on, again, how do we support and serve individuals with disabilities in terms of their employment, and again, how that employment leads to bigger and better things for those individuals and for broader society. I have become over the years, and someone was picking on me the other day. It's like, all you guys do at Wisconsin is employment research. I'm like, well, I actually didn't start doing employment research. Norm Bourbon's over here. Dr. Bourbon, he gets a shout out. He was on my dissertation committee. And I'll admit, when I started, my research had nothing to do with employment, and to a point where, he read the dissertation, held his nose, signed his name, kind of got me through it. But over the years, again, the more I spent time, and just full disclosure, my actual background before I moved on and got a doctorate, I have worked in sheltered employment and seen, the difficulties associated with that. I've been a job developer. I've been a job coach. I've done employer business development in relationships, and then kind of got away from that. And so over the last, I'd say, decade, 15 years, being able to spend more and more time really thinking about how critical employment is and how critical the work we do in helping people obtain employment is to just my own life satisfaction. I don't get to have that joy of placing individuals directly and seeing them succeed and seeing those wonderful outcomes. And I do get to see it through my students. And when they come back and tell me great things about this, I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Tell me more. I'm, a little, okay, I'm sorry, Stacy. I'm a little jelly. I don't get to have that. Again, jelly is an antiquated term, I know, but I'm very slow to adapt to different things. And thinking about my more kind of prepared concepts, I want to start off by, of course, I want to offer our thoughts and prayers to President Biden and his family as they respond to his cancer diagnosis. And both, I think, they're courageous facing of that a very serious health issue. But then also the reminder to a much larger body of the population that we always have to think about this concept of chronic illness and impairment and health and disability affects every person. It isn't just isolated to one group or one section of the United States. Everybody has this experience. To find someone that isn't touched by these significant issues, you just can't. And so when I kind of think about what is the attention that's bringing to and him, being very open and talking about his experience, what is that going to bring to people kind of thinking about, well, what is the national discussion around how do we support individuals? And again, I'll tie it in some other aspects of what I want to get to in a little bit, but I just am appreciative of that. And again, hopeful and prayerful for his family in terms of going through that course of that disease. The next thing is and of course, I'm not very good at these, but how many remember what we're at the welcome remarks last year? You can raise your hand. Nobody was at the welcome remarks last year for the same event? Yeah, we had a tornado. And of course, I talked about, gosh, coming in this morning to give welcome remarks, I was passing down trees, having to take alternate roads. There's branches everywhere. Fortunately, again, friends and family were safe. But I looked at the utter destruction that was in the environment around me. And of course, I'm not very creative for those of you that know me. So I said, oh, well, hey, look at this tornado and look at the challenges this posed. For those of you that were here in hotels, and I'm looking at a couple of you, well, we had to shelter in place in the downstairs. We had to find a safe space because of these impending storms. And it was, we'll say, a very unique experience for a conference to have that. But then to come in and talk about the next day and just the reality of, yes, this horrific storm came through, a lot of damage, what that meant in so many ways to the community. And then, of course, Stacy, I just try and keep her attention to make sure she's not, getting other work done, was like, well, hey, we need to schedule a keynote. And certainly there were some difficulties arranging for folks outside the university to come and do some of these this year. What do you want for a title for your keynote? And so again, started thinking through, well, what did I say last year that I can build off of so I actually have some connectivity for all these? And again, we think about navigating the storm. I thought the tornado was the storm. I was wrong. I will freely admit it. The tornado was just the kickoff. And I think as we watched what's happened as far as all the changes, all the complexities, all the difficulties that we've experienced in certainly the months since, have created so many different changes in how we think about our work, how we approach our work, who we're working with, what we can do, what we can say. And so all of that creates this, again, coming back to this concept of the storm hasn't passed. We are still in the middle of it, and we have to find our way through it. And ultimately, I'll give the Cliff Note version of my talk here. So if you want to get up and eat after it, you could. But storms happen, and protracted experiences happen. We cannot avoid those things. We can't control those things. We can't push. We can't change those things. What we can change is how we respond to it. And so I'll talk about kind of responses and things that I think we need to do. And I'll try to keep it at a multi-level so that hopefully there's something in this for everybody, for the educators who I'll pick on the most because I probably know a lot of them the best, to our wonderful colleagues who are providing direct services, to businesses that might be on this, and just kind of thinking about kind of a larger perspective of things. But when I think about this is I always come back to there's always things that are going to happen that are beyond our control, that our ability to change directly are fairly limited. And they literally reshape the fabric of our communities. Tornado is really easy example. We think on a metaphorical level as far as what's happening in terms of service provision, in terms of opportunities for individuals with disabilities across this country. We are seeing a dramatic change that's happening in those different areas. Next thing is I'd really hoped in all the keynotes that I've been to, they're always really optimistic. And I'm a very optimistic person, but I actually am struggling with some optimism today about who we are, what we're doing, and where do we go next? And what does that look like? I do have some things that I'm optimistic about, and I'll point to those, but we have to keep thinking about what are those things going to happen and where things are going to go. And of course, I was really hoping, and I'll pick on RSA if they're watching. I was really hoping to have something cool to announce, like, hey, the next technical assistant grants have come out, and we won it. Hasn't happened. So I don't get to kind of jump in and kind of talk about those things and in terms of that level of excitement. And so again, then I woke up today, and as I knew it was going to be, it was like 42 degrees when I got outside. It was raining. I'm like, I wonder if anyone would notice if I called in sick. Because it just, you think about the weather outside, and I do think it's a perfect reflection of the national mood among the many people that are serving individuals with disabilities in all capacities. And it's recognizing that, yes, there is this kind of experience going on. This experience will change, but we have to think about how to make the best of it. Fortunately, we've got a roof over our heads. We thought about an outdoor conference at some point, which would have been really cool, but probably not the best on days like today. So, with all this, I keep coming back to if we as providers, as we as educators, as we as researchers are going to be successful, and I define again success as the people we are here to serve, the people who we are here to support, are they successful? We can't just look at, well, what's happened that we're not happy about. We can't just look at all these dramatic changes and say, and throw our hands up and not take a next step. We actually have to think about what is in the future. What is that direction? What are those pathways forward to overcome those different obstacles and achieve what maybe a redefined success looks like going forward as we kind of navigate, again, these new kind of troubled areas that we're experiencing as a whole in terms of service, as a profession. Again, list goes on. I say this in that I think we also have to recognize that despite maybe things changing very quickly, the path forward is a very long, difficult road. There is not going to be any shortcuts. There are no, I see Andre over there and talked about AI earlier. AI is great. It can only do so much for us. It still is going to require our persistence, our planning, our effort, our passion to be successful, to make those changes, to make those things happen. And here's the thing is it's needed. We need to think about how these things work together, where things go, if we're going to be successful in terms of our collaboration and coordination, ultimately toward the success of individuals with disabilities in society. So when I started kind of thinking about it and, had a lot of ideas around what I would try to use as a metaphor, as an analogy, and kind of thinking through a topic. Again, I looked at the storm outside. I looked at the hurricane or tornadoes coming last year. I've been in hurricanes with my colleagues in South Carolina and certainly in DC a number of years ago. It really comes down to you kind of have three choices. And I'm not saying which is the right choice. I know what choice I'm going to take, but what works for me and how I approach things might be different from every one of you. But when we see that storm ahead and we're in the middle of that storm, we kind of have three choices. Choice number one is we kind of sit back and just wait and take a very passive approach and say, well, maybe this will pass. Maybe this will move on and maybe everything will be okay. Maybe I'll get taller so my BMI drops. I just don't see that happening. We can certainly go headlong into the storm. We can say, you know what? Forget about it. We're just going to keep on our same path and we're going to just put even more energy going into whatever this difficult period is. And that's certainly an option. That's certainly a way to go. We can say, you know what, storm, tornado, we don't care. We're going in this direction regardless of what happens. We can also kind of think about, well, we've got all these great capacities, these great colleagues, these great relationships. We together can start thinking about how do we evaluate where the storm is going. If we know the end point and we know the path, we can identify what is the best approach, recognizing that that's happening. How do we move forward so that we continue to have that growth as these things are happening? Because I know I can't change the storm. I can change how I interact and react to the storm in a way that I think is ultimately positive and moves us in the proper direction so that we don't lose sight and we don't lose capacity towards, again, supporting individuals as they pursue quality employment. So with that, I started kind of thinking a little bit about, what is going on right now? And there are some good things. I know it's hard sometimes to think about that. We hear the news every day and we hear the stories from our colleagues. I myself, I'll tell you, there's colleagues who I've had in my office who a grant has been revoked or a contract has been canceled, and they're not sure, first of all, what they're going to do with the people they promised that they were going to provide certain services and supports to. What happens to those people? What do we do next? They've hired people, so they have to go and tell people we're going to have to lay you off because we don't have the support anymore. And having to go through that process, and trust me, it is not a fun process to go and have to talk to somebody about, we don't have a position for you because this grant was canceled or this contract was pulled back. With all those things going on and what all we hear in state and national levels, there are some great things. And I'll kind of come back and forth with, here's what I think is going well in different areas. Here are things that I think we need to work on. And then ultimately, I'll try to give you some direction about how I think we can take next steps together. So again, very happy. And for those of you who didn't know this, RSA a couple of weeks ago, and I'll give credit to Joseph Doney. Thank you, Joe, if you're listening today. And if you don't know Joseph Doney, he sends communications out from RSA. Get to know Joe, get on his listserv because he has a lot of great information about what's happening at RSA. But on April 24th, notified state VR agencies, state vocational rehabilitation agencies, that RSA through Continuing Resolution 3 was awarded the, I'm looking at my notes here, the Consumer Price Index Urban Adjustment for both 24 and for 2025. Now, what that, again, not nice, a lot of acronyms, gobbledygook. What does that mean? It means an extra almost $65 million. 365 million additional dollars going to the VR program this next year. When we were worried about rescissions and changes, I think seeing the value of this program and certainly the individuals involved in putting that resolution together, recognizing it's important, came up and awarded an additional $365 million, both the adjustment for last year that never happened and now the adjustment for this year. That's tremendous. And this happened at a time when I know many agencies were starting to look at kind of, geez, things might be difficult next year, given the cost of services have gone up, but our resources have remained flat or stable. So with that, again, tremendous benefit, but then you have to start thinking about, well, with that benefit, there are some challenges. The reality is as we see those things coming through for these state VR agencies, you still have to, first of all, get your state legislature to appropriate your matching funds. And if you don't do that, that money gets returned. When we think about years past, the most recent year, again, all return funds were utilized by state agencies. The year before, a couple $100 million was returned and then not used, or it went out through other programs, which is wonderful. But again, the intent of those funds is that they are there for individuals with disabilities to access vocational rehabilitation services. But if we don't have the match to put up, that money goes back to RSA. And then there's, again, a question of what is the viability and strength of this program if people are returning funds. And it isn't always just about those matches. It's not always just about the states coming up and kind of coming up with those. I don't know if anyone remembers, but a couple of years ago, we had this thing called the COVID-19 pandemic. Does anyone kind of remember that? Yeah, everyone, now they're crying. I'm sorry. You know, the impact of the pandemic was multiple in terms of we saw a dramatic drop off in application rates, but more also concerning is we saw a dramatic drop off in individuals who were applying to become VR counselors and come in and provide services. We saw a definite reduction in the number of vendors, people who are supporting the mission of in collaboration of the VR program by providing a range of needed services. Those have not come back very quickly. And so now we're at a point where we have more money, we can serve more people, we're seeing more applications, but does a bottleneck exist now that we don't have the ability to refer people to services that they might need because those service providers don't have the capacity anymore? They've had to let people go during the pandemic or they closed entirely. And so now we have individuals coming in, it's look, we're here, we have the money, which is really important, we can serve you, we just don't have the group that can provide that service. And that's going to be a challenge. And again, I'm going to lay out some challenges and hopefully we'll kind of talk about what we can do about some of these things. The other thing, and again, I'll personally say this is, you know, we're at a point now where I was hoping that I'd be able to share great news about the next round of technical assistance centers was going to be available because I do think technical assistance centers are an important tool in supporting the state vocational rehabilitation agencies and their participating or collaborating agencies. I can tell you, at least I checked last night. I didn't check today. So if it's come out, I apologize. There are currently no requests for proposals for national technical assistance. What this means is that if those don't come out, and I don't believe they are. So again, I'm not RSA, so maybe they're secretly going to release them soon. But we're getting to a point where it's very difficult to release anything and actually have a competition and get those things turned around and back out. I do look out, and next year I don't see us being able to offer the same level of services that the Vocational Rehabilitation Technical Assistance Center for Quality Management out of San Diego, the National Technical Assistance Center for Transition Collaborative, I mix up which is the C, out of North Carolina, or the technical assistance here that's offering this event today on quality employment. I don't see them actually being able to continue after September 30th in a meaningful way. Now, that affects the ability of states that are agencies are looking for supports to receive those supports, at least from a national center. That can have, again, dramatic impact about where we're going to go and how we're going to go, where we're going to go next. In terms of the individuals we serve, again, they're the critical piece in all this. What I've been in, and again, Steve Wooderson's not here. He told me he was going to have to step out. I did a report recently for CSAVR. I'm sorry, Council for the State Administrators of Vocational Rehabilitation. I always make sure I give the acronyms. What we've witnessed over the last 4 years is increasing applications. People are coming back to VR. They're seeing VR as a valuable resource, as a valuable way for them to achieve their aims of finding employment. To a point where we're actually back to 2018 levels, which is remarkable. And I'll say why it's remarkable. Historically, when we looked at from prior to 2018 all the way back to 2000, 2005, we saw actually a steady, slow erosion of applications for VR services. And so if you think about where we stopped off in 2018 and actually calculate out what we would think that erosion might have been from 2018 to 2025, that hasn't happened. We're actually flat relative to 2018, which means that we've actually increased relative to what we would have expected by about 5%, which is great. People are thinking about VR as being the place to go for services. We're seeing a huge spectrum of youth find out about VR services through pre-employment transition services. So it's a great introduction. It's getting them involved. It's getting them aware about work, what work might look like after that, and when they move through that transition to adult life. Still some things we need to work on it, but again, it's good to be aware. Pre-ETS is, again, a wonderful marketing program, both for youth and a marketing program for opportunity. The biggest shock when I started looking at data, and I'll come back to thinking about how we might be changing as both a country and as well as a profession. I was amazed when I looked at the data for, again, CSAVR in terms of what are the numbers of individuals who are over 50 who are applying for services and are part of our service agendas. Last time I looked, and again, it's changed. So if I went back to 2017, they made up about 20%, which kind of made sense. Today, they're closer to 33%. So almost 1 out of 3 individuals applying for VR services today are individuals over the age of 50. We rock. I'll admit it. I'm not shy about it. But what's really interesting about this population over 50, and you look at 50, 55, 60, 65, et cetera, these are individuals who recognize the value of rehabilitation services to keep their jobs. When you look at individuals who are over the age of 50, they're 2 to 3 times more likely, again, depending on which age group over 50 you're looking at, as individuals from the ages of 18 to 49 of having a job when they apply for services. They're at risk for job loss, and they're identifying VR as that pathway forward, that group that can help them maintain their overall success. Oh, time is relative, Stacy. So we're seeing this great group. And again, that trend is going to continue because we are aging as a population. People are getting older. But the reality is, based on a number of different factors, people are working longer than they ever have before. They have to for survival. And they need to maintain those. And so I was thinking about when I took classes back in, now I'll really put it out there, the 1980s, in thinking about, becoming a rehabilitation counselor, we never talked about older individuals. The focus was, let's look at this 18 to 35, 18 to 40-year-old group. When they're quickly becoming, and it's still an important group, but they're not maybe a key demographic that we're not training students to think about. In terms of businesses, the economy continues to change. And great things I love seeing again is, you think about the employment rate, is basically back to where it was before, prior to the pandemic. But there's a lot of people not in the employment pool, who are not in the labor market pool, that we want to get in there, that we need to keep working on that. So businesses are still and have always been looking for high quality individuals that can advance the focus of that business. And again, some great work done by the net in terms of developing relationships and teaching agencies how to develop relationships with businesses. But there's a lot of work to be done there, because I can tell you equal studies that I've been involved with where when you go and talk to businesses, they've never heard about VR. They might have their own in-house program, and the in-house program does some great things, but you said, well, do you know your state vocational rehabilitation agency can help with that? And they say, who? It's not a good sign. We do have, again, there's an identity thing, there's an awareness piece that we have to certainly address. Lastly, I'll just pick on the educators for a second, and then I will say some positive things to end out. So it's like that good cookie sandwich, you start with a compliment, then give the tough stuff, and then something good at the end. We're seeing so many new programs. And again, I'll call out Dr. Bervin again. Dr. Bervin is doing an analysis and kind of looking at, what does doctoral education look like today compared to the last time he did a study on this 20 years ago? What does master's education look like? What does undergraduate education look like? Again, those are coming, Dr. Bervin. Don't worry, you'll get assigned those soon. It has changed remarkably. And it is, again, it's not a bad thing, but we don't know if it's a good thing. What is happening? What is the focus of these different programs? How are we preparing students to enter the field in vocational rehabilitation to provide quality employment? And we know that this is challenging because our accrediting body has changed a couple of years ago. And to what extent is employment a primary focus of our identity, or has it shifted? And I'm seeing increasing numbers of programs who are shifting over into kind of merge or hybrid models, which are interesting, innovative, and get students in. But again, for those of you that caught the AI presentation that Sarah did earlier, just because we can do something doesn't mean we should. And I think we have to be thoughtful about it as we move forward. So I kind of belabored a lot of kind of really boring points. I'll stuck with it so far. In the closing 2 minutes, you don't have to do so too. I got it. More now than ever. And I think I get up here every year, and I have for years, and saying we need to collaborate, we need to coordinate, and it falls off into the echo of even this chamber. We are not going to be successful unless we learn to really develop true cooperative relationships with each other. If you're an educator, if you don't know the name of your state VR director, learn it. If you call and they don't know who you are, that's a problem. If you're a vocational rehabilitation agency and you're looking for, training or support on something, and you don't feel like you can call the local university that has a program or the nearest university, that's a problem. If they can't direct you to somebody who might know more about it and can really, maybe provide a training on it, that's an issue. All these issues are some things that we can certainly overcome, but we have to actually start by communicating. We have to talk to each other and actually come up with the next level of how are we going to organize ourselves so that we can actually provide the support and services for individuals with disabilities to move forward. So today I'll end with asking all of you, and I know it's hard to show passion after you've been sitting for 30 minutes and hear me kind of go on in a monotone, but I'm asking all of you to leverage those passions that got you into this field, live those passions by reaching out. If you haven't reached out to one of the local vendors lately, and not for, hey, I need a field placement for a student, or I need this from you, reach out and just say, what can I do to help you? What can I do to make your services more effective? How can I make your agency better? Because by doing that, they're going to make me a better educator. By doing that, they're going to make me better in terms of working with students. It's going to make the students better. And ultimately, it's going to help the individuals that we're here to serve, individuals with disabilities looking for that life-changing experience of going to work and keeping that job. So I ask at the end, live your passion. You got into it for a reason. I know it's hard to think about that passion as you're at a point where it's drizzly outside and we're facing the storm. We're trying to work through it. But please use that passion to guide you to reach out, make a contact, make a new connection, add to your network, and do what you can to connect with others, because that's how we're going to move forward over the next couple of years. All right. Thank you.